You're listening to the Bombad Generals.
General? Oh.
Hey, welcome to the Bombad Generals. It's Seth. I'm here with Matt. Thanks so much for listening. We're excited that you're here. Matt, how are you?
I'm pretty good. Also excited that people are here. So I've been told. I mean, obviously right now it's just you and me, but we do it for the people. We do it for the masses.
Yes. And sometimes for our own vein. Yes.
Awesome. 100% that is part of it. Yeah, if you have a podcast, you do better at Legion. This is fact.
This is true. Yes, yes. Well, speaking of like podcast and like tactics and everything, Matt, you have something that you want to share regarding that.
We did a plug last week, and I have a completely different plug this week. We are now the plug show. What we are not going to be is a Shatterpoint show, but I try not to talk about it because people are like, oh no, it's going to kill Legion. It's not. But I do think it is a really good game, and I'm really excited. I've been enjoying it, playing it a lot. And I'm actually dipping my toe into some different style of content creation for that. We'll probably put the link in the description here, but by the time this goes up, we should be fully launched with BombadTactics.com. It uses the Bombad name. It is not affiliated with this show at all. If there's anything awesome or terrible there, you can get mad at me, not Seth. He just said, yeah, you're cool with using the Bombad name. But we're seeing a little bit in the thing, but it's got, unit guides. Right now I've got all the primaries and most of the secondaries out. Hopefully by the end of the week I'll have every unit in Wave 1. There's some breakdowns as far as like, hey, here's a list that's a little off the wall, a little different, some tactics stuff, talking about the one objective we have, shifting priorities. There's probably going to be a lot of that, tactics stuff coming. And then also a little bit of hobby, which if you're a Legion player still applies. The one article I've got in there is about how to make 3D printer, use your 3D printer to make stencils for like Arabesh and whatnot. Because personally for me, I'm not that artistic, so I need to do it via 3D printing, not by hand. And there's also a dice simulator. So there's lots of really good stuff. Also some useful links to other things like the Discord, the rules forum, all of that. If you're interested in Shatterpoint or know people who are, it would be awesome if you would check it out, send feedback, pass it along, because hopefully, this is the first step, and then maybe in the future there'll be videos, battle reports, that kind of thing. So just wanted to plug that since I'm intimately involved with it. But again, Bombad Generals is a Legion show. But again, if you're competitive, it's kind of a website for some competitive Shatterpoint is the idea.
Yeah, so that is BombadTactics.com. BombadTactics.com for all you audio listeners out there.
Yeah, just go into the description, click the link. Easy enough. But enough of that. No more.
Yeah, screw Shatterpoint. We're Legion.
Screw that game where Obi-Wan's viable. All right. I said it.
Well, let's continue on to our first segment of today's episode, which is what have you been running? And Matt, this past weekend you went to a local store championship, and spoiler alert, you took the win. You now have a world's invite. Yeah. Congratulations. How did that go? What were you running and all that jazz?
It was good. Yes. So it was only a 20-person event, just enough to get that ELO bump. So that's nice. Reset all of that. But at first I was like, oh, I don't know. How much can you really take away from a 20-person event? But actually the way things went down, we were using new points, new errata. I felt like there's a lot of stuff to talk about. So I wanted to highlight it. I think the first thing to talk about was like Darks and Blizzard, right? Those were the big meta monsters.
Yeah.
No one took Blizzard Force. There were a few people who took Darks, and people were still teching against Darks. So the Darks did not do well. It was I was very relieved because I was at one point thinking of like still doing maybe like Boba double Dark but drop an activation, or Krennic double Dark, and I was like, nah, I don't think people will I think people will still be teching because that's what they're used to, and I'm not familiar. I think, again, Dark Troopers, my big prediction was I think Dark Troopers actually win something coming out of this, but I think it'll take some time where people get complacent and stop teching for it, because now if you tech for Dark Troopers, you're probably going to win. Before it was like, if you tech, you have a chance. Now you'll probably win because it got less efficient, it kind of lost a playmaker. So I think that was the first thing for me. Dark showed up and did kind of but otherwise I took our own advice when I was list building. So I ended up doing a Iden Boba list, very creative, very original, but we were talking a lot about red save meta, so having all the high velocity piercing sniper shots was awesome. And some of the tech I made was I had a couple medics in the list, and that countered other people's snipers, and that in the mirror match was actually, I would say, a big difference maker because I came up against another Boba Iden. I was also at one point looking at an 11 activation version and then being like, man, there's not a lot of upgrades I like. If I go down to 10, I can cram in all this stuff. I can even get Boba Flamethrower, obviously 2 medics. That's great. But 10 acts with a non-force user list, like, do I really want to do that? And then I was saying, Matt, we just talked about this on the show. Act count is going lower. What? Do it. Just do it. And I was glad I did. Had a small bid. We haven't really talked much about bidding, but like, it was really nice IRL, especially when you're traveling and you don't really know what the tables are going to look like. Having that choice of blue player, red player was really good. So I think maybe that was something we missed talking about in our discussion about kind of store champs, what to expect, how to approach it. But yeah, lots of Iden in the event, lots of red saves with Empire, Gar. So those are kind of my takeaways, just things that we've already been looking at and kind of starting to see it. We'll get really good data this weekend. I think we've got both Indy Open and Atlantic City Open. People have had a little bit more time to breathe, process the new points. Maybe we'll see something different, but honestly, I think Iden Boba's here to stay. I think Iden's here to stay. There were 3 Idens in a 20-person event. They were all doing really well. There's a lot of like Iden on Iden kills that kept it from being like all the top 3. But she's good, and Boba's still good. I used the flame projector maybe once. I never played Making His Way in the Galaxy, so
Interesting. Yeah.
It's just a card, like, especially against red saves, it's kind of I find a lot of the time I don't like giving up the threat of Boba Fett using all his range 2 dice, 5 black pierce 1 at range. You lose that threat if you play it. It's a list where, based on the order control, you can get away with playing standing orders. I mean, I even have push in there, where I order usually Inferno and a Shore Trooper. With Coordinate, you get all your core out of the bag, so you're just left with like a couple snipers, couple operatives, an officer, improvised. Boba's fine with that in the early game, if you're just trying to go last with him. If you want to go first with a unit, have them on the table. I don't know if we've talked enough about this, but you can kind of get away with a bag like that if you're trying to delay, because you just wait, okay, first operative, it's Iden. Next time I draw an operative, improvised. Maybe I get to refresh it with the officer. Boba can go last or close to last. If you reverse sort, but not great, and you need to go first or early with Boba, you could be in a really bad spot. Improvised is not good for fishing for orders. But that was kind of beside the point. I forget what I was talking about. Iden's really good. Oh yes, because now Ewoks are in the TTS mod, so we'll actually get to start trying them. I don't know. I think we're both in the same boat, right? Like, I don't know if they're really gonna be force in the meta. But let's say they are. Usually you would look at a list like this and say, does it have enough? It's all small, high-quality dice pools. Can it do enough against Ewoks? And to that, I would say, hey, if you really need to tech against Ewoks, I've already got the Flamer upgrade in. I'll just take the Flamer command card, swap it out for Making His Way, which I wasn't playing anyways, and now I can probably deal with Ewoks, because they'll just die to 2 Flamers. And yeah, like I was getting 650, I think, is what I averaged on kill points. So it can kill stuff. Can it kill 80 Ewoks? Well, with 2 flamers, maybe. We'll
Maybe.
see.
Maybe.
I think it's still really good. And this weekend was, that Captain Holt vindication meme. So that's what that was.
Now, did you face like any like darks with this list?
No. So it is. It's. I don't know if in current darks it would be enough to win a current dark meta, battle versus what that would look like. I don't think it would beat like my world's Boba double dark or like a Palp double dark with Guardian. I don't think it has enough there. But considering how much those lists lost, it might have enough. But it is also like a situation where the list I faced in the mirror was more teched to face Dark Troopers. Instead of the double shores, they had like one shore mortar plus some HH-12 storms, which is a lot better in the dark mirror. But then, or not in the dark matchup, but in the mirror, it's a lot worse, right? So I'm kind of playing that game of, well, I hope I don't face a dark player, and maybe if I do, maybe I hope that I can kind of skill gap it a bit use Boba as a playmaker. I think you can burn down one dark pretty fast, and then maybe these days that's enough because they're down to 2 pieces instead of 3 again because like maybe we've lost Boba. So we'll see. But I kind of played the let other people do my dirty work for me, and
it paid off.
Worked out. Luckily. The Luke Cook strategy of just don't face Dark Troopers with your
don't face Dark Troopers and roll crits.
Yeah, exactly. Well, again, hey, we talk about don't roll dice. This is like, usually we talk about that with like force choke and force push.
This is just don't face darks.
Well, no, but also, don't roll dice. I've got marksman, so I don't have to roll dice as much, or I have a lot of critical, so I am rolling dice, but I'm probably pushing crits through. And I have a lot of pierce, so you don't roll dice as the.
It's true.
As far as dice go, it's the less variance version of a list that kind of needs some dice, right? But actually, that also reminded me that question about another thing we talked about: HH-12 specialist storms, because we talked about that's a pure just storm with an HH-12. They're okay into darks. They kind of suck into everything else. With the specialists, they're kind of decent in when you don't have to face darks. I had 2 games against people, both of whom had at least 2 HH-12 storms. The first game, they got to do what they wanted to do. They were a low priority target. They were eventually able to just shoot recover, and they were doing great. They almost one-shot Inferno. They got like a full boat, whatever that is, 9 dice, 8 dice, I think it was.
Wild.
6 after cover, and Inferno went almost 0 for 6. They spent their surge to get 1 save. Obviously, that's like spikes in both directions.
Yeah.
But like, they can do that. They can just sit, roll a lot of hits. Now, in the second game, they actually had to move around, and then that's when you start seeing they're not that great. So they still have drawbacks, but I think the specialist HH-12, seeing it in person and like really playing against it, I was impressed as far as like, okay, this is strong tech, but still useful in other places. So
cool beans.
Big W for the Bombads, not just because I got the big W, but because I think things that we've already talked about, we're seeing it play out. Like our insights were not invalid yet. Now we'll see what this weekend brings. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'll see what this weekend, kind of like the rest of the summer, brings. Especially like when Ewoks come into play. Like,
yeah, again, just
no
use
idea.
Flamethrowers. Whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, use some flamethrowers. Hey, maybe ATRTs with flamethrowers will come back.
Yeah, they won't.
They won't.
But how about you? Because you've also been trying something new off of the points. What have you been running recently?
Yeah, so of course, surprise, I'm doing a Yoda list. But I'm doing a little bit different where like for Adepticon I kind of ran like a Yoda Chewbacca list with triple barks, and it's very like objective play, and the biggest things why I played that was it's a big counter against Blizzard. Like I think it played the objective deck as good as Blizzard, if not a little bit better if I played it right. But I kind of pivoted to be like more of a Yoda gunline list, to where kind of like a Anakin gunline list, to where like you have barrier and everything. But Yoda just has a little objective flex that Anakin doesn't have. It's like, rocking Yoda with barrier, burst of speed, force push, clone commander with improvised orders, 2 phase 1s, Z6 with medics, phase 1 with Boyle, and then here we go, 2 full arc squads, both with the
Full
decent,
arcs, baby.
full arcs. There's that extra 6 points really helped there.
It helps a lot. I mean, they're
does.
sub 100 now.
They're only 8 points more than my phase 1s with medics, so that's really nice. And then a arc strike team with Echo. So that's an 8-act list. Of course, with the act count going down, I'm not feeling it a ton. But I really enjoyed this list because it has a lot of tech, like for defense. And previously, like for especially my Guy Chewie list, I always my favorites were like Yoda's 1-pip and Yoda's 2-pip. But in this list, my favorite is Yoda's 3-pip because everything will just hit really hard with all the shared aims and surges. And that just helps a ton, especially like with the clone commander giving more extra surges to Yoda and also using guidance. Using Yoda's 2-pip for giving relentless to arcs. Relentless arcs are really good because that was really nice to have because you get the double move, so you get 2 aims and then you can attack, which is super helpful.
Right. So question there.
Yep.
Sorry if I'm interrupting a flow, but I know even when Yoda came out, people were like, oh, for that 2-pip, battle meditation, put battle meditation on Yoda, and then instead of giving an order to Yoda, you can put it on a second ARC trooper, and now you have 2 relentless arcs. I'll tell you my thoughts on that, but first I want to hear your thoughts on that.
A few things. It takes up a force slot, and the barrier, burst of speed, force push, those 3 are making the list. You need the burst of speed for the mobility, especially on a 2-pip for Yoda, more for end game play, not necessarily beginning or middle. And arcs still aren't as punchy as I want them to, so giving up I don't know, it's not as it's cool, has a cool thematic thing, but it's not as game breaking or this is going to hit really hard as it was before, because max they're only rolling 6 dice with sharpshooter 1, so there's not actually a ton of dice, and you're rolling about 5 or 6 hits in there when you have multiple aims.
They don't surge.
They don't surge.
Blank.
Yeah, so it's not as hitting, it doesn't hit as hard as what some people might think. If they could add medics to that, if they had a personnel slot, that'd be totally different, but they don't.
That'd be nice.
That'd be really nice. But no, and plus order control for Yoda is really nice. It's just very valuable because he doesn't have a training slot, so you can't bring C's on that at all. So it's needed for order control with Yoda.
I think you nailed it. The opportunity cost of the force slot for 1 card, because you're not using Bat-Med for anything else really there. Maybe for if you played Attack of the Clones, then you could put an order on Yoda, but you're basically not using Bat-Med for anything else. And yeah, I just rather would have order control on Yoda. Yoda, at the end of the day, the arcs are there and they're nice, but it's still a Yoda list. And you want to have that, especially with Relentless Yoda. Sure, it's a gunline list and he might be sitting more in the back, but the threat of a burst of speed Yoda with Relentless coming in and just starting to take the game on his back, that I want that more than I want.
Yeah, it's a big threat range. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially going his 1-pip, jumping in there and then playing a burst of speed 2-pip. That's 4 speed 3 moves. It's really good.
Really good. It's really good.
Yeah, because Yoda can still carry the game if most of the army's dead. But I feel like he needs that burst of speed to really carry the game, because then he doesn't have to rely on his 1-pip as much.
I think too, one of the things I like this, so I guess full disclaimer for people, I think I ended up making almost the exact same list and sharing it in the team chat, and then you're like, oh yeah, I'm basically running this, but a slightly better version because you fit Boyle in there. And it excites me a lot because as much as I like Yoda Chewie Barks, I'm just not a very good speeders player. I think like my bread and butter is more force user gun lines. So this excites me, and this is like honestly one of the lists that has me excited to like grind some Legion to try this out. I think the good thing / worry, I'm kind of always worried about surges in a Yoda list. If you really wanted to, you could change P1 clones with medics into P2s, but I think you really want the medics at 8-ax in a sniper meta.
Yep.
But having the clone commander in there instead of Chewie helps a lot on the other turns because that's 2 extra surges. And the other thing that worries me a little bit is, well, 2 things. Darks. But again, we kind of just say, hey, maybe you play the let other people do your dirty work for you game. Unlike Boba Iden still has like piercing marksman crits, piercing Boba crits, Boba rocket, a whole bunch of critical. This list has like none of that. You basically can't kill any darks.
Yeah, Yoda has to get engaged and double hit him. Like that's pretty much
which is
only
not
defense.
great.
No.
Usually, like you played against a lot of darks back in the day when we were testing for Worlds, and like, yeah, Yoda would get in there eventually, but that's after you Chewie, RPS, fire support have started to whittle away, and then Yoda comes in for cleanup. If they're basically full when Yoda has to go in,
it's a little tougher.
Especially now if people are playing like Krennic Darks more than Boba Darks, and they've got that standby card. That worries me, but again, I think you just kind of say, whatever, if I have, take my chances. And then, how do you think it holds up against Iden and high-velocity snipers? Because we were talking about that. You've got Barrier, you've got a couple medics, you got Boyle, but you can't really hurt snipers all that well. Like, you can't win the sniper war unless you're just going really hard. I mean, air support helps a little bit, but not that much when they have low profile. I don't know.
Yeah, if I went like against full snipers, I still think I win the sniper war. Like if it's just like not the Iden sniper or like the Inferno sniper, I think I still win that war. Because the DC-15s losing that critical one actually like really hurt the sniper. Echo can still take care of like the white safe snipers pretty well by himself. It's like that's kind of why I have like the medics there. Is to like kind of withhold that, like that's for the high velocity like piercing shots, especially like with barrier. If they have a crit going through, I can obviously use that. So I'll have to do more testing against like a list like you just shared. But I think if you played it right and you had the right objective, you could still do pretty well. Because you still have a lot of Pierce. Like,
yeah, and the thing too is arcs are impervious. So if they're going to try to shoot into P1s, that's probably okay. And then if they start shooting into arcs, especially if you do, when they do tack strike turn 1, you're playing Luminous turn 1.
Luminous, yeah.
Then the chance that they put through 2 crits with Iden and you just roll 3 blocks with impervious, or even 2 blocks and only take 1, when a lot of units would take 2, and then you can heal it back. Like it's not terrible. It's not terrible. And you've got tricks. And you've got a lot of tricks with Yoda in the objective game. So I think it's not an easy matchup, but I think that's why, again, yes, as you say, I want the medic version more so than the P2 version.
It's probably like a 60%, 40%. You'd probably win 40% of the times you play the list, but like it's still not like it's only like a 20% difference to where like you can still.
It's a list where it's a matchup where you're saying, hey, I gotta do some tricks, but also maybe I just gotta rely on the fact that I've put in reps with Yoda, hypothetically, because I feel like me personally, I haven't done enough yet. I've put in enough reps with Yoda that I can overcome the rest of it. And I think the thing we learned, talking to Mike Dashes, from his LVO list where he rolled with the 501st, and is kind of applicable here, is that you're running full arcs, but in the early game, high level Legion can be a lot of kind of cagey positioning early. Having 3, in that case, Mike had 4 arc snipers. Here we've got 3. It's not terrible in the early game to have 3 of those.
Not at all. Yeah.
You kind of feel like you have 4. Like if it's a really cagey game, you could play the Yoda 2-pip on Echo and just guidance him for an extra move. So you kind of have 4 snipers there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not bad, I don't think. You got Scout, so you can kind of move up. You can kind of get around terrain if it's in an awkward position. Scout 2 on the arcs. I think bodies to pick up something like Recover the Supplies is a little tricky because you don't really have like a spare body, but neither did I this weekend, and I was fine with that. You make it work. Eventually Boyle can say, okay, I'm done hurting myself for the team. I'll go grab some crates. I'm interested in it. I like it. I'm excited to try it.
It is. I think like in a game like a Recover Their Supplies, your whole thing is just to stop your opponent from getting the recover, like the middle supply drop box, and you're not necessarily going in. I think it's what's probably like harder is like hostage. I'll probably put like Boyle on the hostage and just like try to guide him back as quick as possible, so that then I can like just use Guardian on him. But then I got it.
Boyle? I was thinking, because I don't know, I was thinking about this exact thing. Like, hostage, do you just put it on the 6-man so you can threaten the shoot turn 1 or the double shot if you use the Yoda 2-pip? Like, that's good with 6-man squad. I don't know.
No. Play around.
Exactly.
You know?
But it's, I think for me, I in the past have run a lot of lists where it's like, oh, I've got a couple naked core. They can go off and grab some boxes turn 2 and just hide.
Yeah.
But hey, if you're in control of the game, you can claim those boxes turn 5 if you need to, right? With whatever. Or the clone commander eventually makes his way over and claims a box. Like, you don't need something naked. Or the arcs just end up like they move up, they do some shooting. They move back, claim a box.
So actually, I played Recover for this, and like the back objectives, I just did. Like Echo had a box in the back. He didn't claim it like turn 1. I think he claimed it like turn 2 or 3. I think turn 3 he claimed it.
Yeah,
and then
he's
like
just moving, shooting,
and then I just put Boyle next to the other box, and then he just hung out there until I needed to claim it, and then I just kept pushing. Like I just punished my opponent if they came for the center objective.
It's one of those things where you just put the boxes, because there's kind of 2 strategies to recover, right? You either put the boxes way in the corner and just grab them with units that are never going to contribute, or you put them kind of where the battle's going to be because your army's already there, and then you just kind of claim them. And I think you just have to do the latter.
That's what I
step,
did.
right?
Yep.
Because you can't put it way off to the side, because if Boyle is sitting on it way off to the side, he's not guardianing.
Yeah.
So
And you really want that extra Guardian, like.
Yes.
Because you want to take the fire off the arcs. Mm-hmm. That's the big thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of that's what we've been running.
Yeah. I like how it kind of looped together, right? As far as like, hey, this is something that's going to be big, and then we can kind of talk about that in context with the Yoda list. But I'm more excited to try that Yoda list than
I think Yoda will be big, like. Because I think the 2 best Force users right now with the Vader nerf is Anakin and Yoda. And I think Yoda will be big, but I think more people will default to Anakin.
I think people will default to Anakin, but I think, especially with the Force choke change, Jedi are, and all the objective changes as well, Jedi are still probably okay. And by Jedi, I guess I mean Force users. But really, Yoda is kind of alone in that S tier, I'm just going to put a game on my back Jedi kind of way.
Yep.
And that could get you out of a whole lot of 60-40 matchups.
It has before.
Yeah. And again, like, if I wanted to run something like this, am I going to grab it and then run it next weekend at a local, at a store champ? Probably not. But in a month, if I have a tournament, I probably want to start, getting the reps in now, because Yoda is that kind of character. Versus Item Boba, sure, I kind of played stuff like it before. So, and about 1 game in last weekend, I was like, okay, right, yeah, this is what you do with this list. Inferno has coordinate to a core trooper, of course, right. And then you just kind of go. This one, there's a bit more training wheels early on to be aware of.
No, I don't think there is even training wheels. You just
Well, you need to training wheels is bad. There are no training wheels, but you need time to learn. You need time to learn the list.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's our segment of what have you been running. We'll come in with our next. We'll come in with our next segment. I cannot talk. We will come in with our next segment talking about skirmish and why you shouldn't play it after the break.
This episode is brought to you by Admiral Akbar's Fine Burritos. After a tough day at the office, when you return home, one thing should be on your mind. Akbar's Fine Burritos. All other thoughts go out the window. Artisanally thin crafted, these calamari burritos contain only the finest organic ingredients. When you think snacks, think of Akbar. Remember, it's a wrap! Okay, and we are back. Seth, you tossed this out earlier in the week as far as the topic of discussion. I'm interested in it because we are a competitive Legion podcast, and you were like, yeah, don't play skirmish games. And I thought, okay, yeah, that makes sense, but I think you have more to say on that as far as why do you tell people competitively don't play skirmish?
Yeah. So whenever you go to a competitive competition, it's always an 800-point match. If you play skirmish, which is more popular in the local scene, I know like my area, they love their skirmish. It's a quicker game, not as much table space is taken up, and you don't need as much terrain, nor do you need as much models on the table because it's only 500 points. The thing about that,
if you want to play a competitive skirmish game, just play Shatterpoint and visit BombadPodcast.com.
Yes.
Aha! I slipped it back in there even though I said I wouldn't. Anyways.
This is not a Shatterpoint podcast.
This is not a Shatterpoint podcast, don't worry, people. But yes, Legion-wise, it's a way to play Legion quicker.
Play
too.
Spec Ops. Like, this isn't, like, if you're wanting to, like, get into Legion, sure, if you want to, like, understand the basic mechanics of the game, like, skirmish is probably a good start to that. But if you want to, like, start, like, comparing, like, this unit's really good. Like, for instance, ARC Troopers. ARC Troopers, I think, are really good in skirmish because they can hit range 2 pretty hard, and by turn 1, turn 2. But in an 800-point game, they're not as efficient. Same with like Wookiees. Like Wookiees are like decent, like more decent in skirmish because of the because it's not as much distance to go.
Iden's going to be pretty useless. Like Iden with 2 snipers Inferno is trash in skirmish, I bet.
Let's take Yoda for instance. Yoda, I think, is not great at all in skirmish because 1, he's super expensive, and 2, he mainly synergizes with a good army around him, and with him being so expensive, you just don't have a solid army around you. So I don't think he's super good. With that, like, if you're wanting to like base like how good a unit is in the game, skirmish is not the way to go because the whole game is different. Balance, like Iden benefits a lot on range and the specific objectives that is played. Yoda also benefits on the specific objectives that is played, also by the army around him. Darth Vader doesn't really care. He kind of just does it. So Darth Vader's like really good in skirmish. So if you want to play Vader, skirmish is the way to go. I think
he's still fine.
No, he's fine. He's fine.
Yeah.
He's just like I've let's say like Commander Vader, for instance. I've seen people play Commander Vader in skirmish and they're like, oh my gosh, Commander Vader's like the best Vader in the world. Like, he's the best unit in the game. And then they take him to like an 800 point and they kind of feel like his speed won. Like, why he, like, you know, and because there's so much different like distance and like it's like double the size of the game. Multiplying
range control is so important in normal Legion. Even if you're going with an aggressive list, understanding range bands and really controlling that is huge, and you don't learn that as much in skirmish. Skirmish is a lot more like go for it, roll fistfuls of dice, which is, hey, if that's what you want to do 100%, but like if we're talking like, hey, you really are trying to get into the competitive scene and gauge that and like learn from your decisions and how they turned out, tactically it's night and day, I would say, on skirmish.
Yeah, it is.
Regular.
Because like bikes are more effective on an 800-point game than they are on a 500-point game. All that to say, what we encourage, or specifically I encourage, is Skirmish is a good tool and resource for learning keywords and learning just the basic fundamentals of the game. But when you want to get more competitive and more like bring your game level up, Skirmish is not the way to go. You want to get those 800-point games. You want to allocate about 2.5 hours for a game instead of like an hour and a half to get the full experience of the game, because that's also how the original developers intended for the game to be played. So that's how the whole game is balanced. Is balanced for that. That's how the whole game is played. It's a 6-turn, 800-point game. Was it 6 feet? Yeah, no, 3.
6 by 3. Yeah.
Yeah, 6 by 3. Matt. And honestly, I think it's just a lot more enjoyable playing an 800-point game than it is a 500-point game, because the game is balanced for that. That's kind of all I have to say about Skirmish. Not a rant, but
yeah, I was hoping we would get a Seth
no,
rant.
I'm not gonna rant about. If I'm gonna rant about something, I'm not gonna rant about Skirmish. Like, it's more of a casual format. It's not a competitive format.
Yeah, exactly. You might learn some bad habits from it. Be aware of that.
You will learn some bad habits from it.
You probably will.
Yes.
So, hey, we're not knocking it. If that's what you enjoy, like, hey, the name of the game is just have fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously, I think for both of us, competitive is how we have fun. So we come at it from that perspective. If you have fun with Skirmish, keep playing Skirmish. But if you're someone who has fun with the competitive side and you're like, man, I love Skirmish and I love Legion, and now I want to get competitive. Why can't I win competitively? You need to practice the real thing.
Yeah. You go to your first 800-point tournament and you're like, oh, I'm gonna this is the best list ever, and you just get smoked. Like
jerks use, not really jerks, but some people used to be like, oh man, TTS Legion and real life Legion are different games, and it's like, okay, no, that's hyperbole. People who are good in one are usually good in the other. It's a lot. There's some differences for sure that get heightened or lessened, but it's the same game. Skirmish and normal Legion, they are different games. Again, I really like what you said. Like, it's good for mechanics, keywords, literally how does this unit function? Not so much like how do I actually really use this unit. It doesn't scale. So yeah, good. I like that. It
doesn't scale, and neither does anything else in this game.
Ayo! Rip Wookiees.
Rip BX droids. And Grievous and
BX droids lost or gained shields for cheaper now.
Did you see any BX droids like in your local tournament this past weekend?
No. All the droid players were running AATs, which I don't think is a terrible choice, honestly. I think
all the Force users got nerfed, so
there were not a lot of Force users.
CIS, or just like in general.
Just in general, and I was happy I didn't bring one, because again, when you're traveling, sometimes you don't know about the tables. They were a bit open. Like, there were some ones where it was very hard to hide anything out of LOS, which, hiding snipers, that's a problem, but at least you can, if the only LOS blockers are in a corner, snipers are okay with that. Jedi are.
Yeah, it's true.
So that's the thing. Maybe we talk about, like, think Force users, they're still good, but one day they're going to just past that point of no return. I mean, maybe you have to have Force users that are like a little too good, just because you do run the risk of getting screwed by the table. And maybe we are past that. I don't know. Things to think about now at the end of the episode. But anyways, yeah. Boom, boom, boom. Things to consider when traveling. Be prepared for a wide variety of tables.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to help practice for that, create a wide variety of tables, like in your local matchups. Like, okay, like I'm gonna practice like a less dense board and a more open board. I think that'll help just practice, because I know like whenever I like build a table, I kind of like naturally just build it like as like, oh, like this is how like I think a standard table should be, but I don't like. That's like how I naturally. But I think sometimes it's also beneficial to be like, oh, let me do like a little less like. Not put a line of sight blocker in the middle, just in case.
A little more, because sometimes you get, like for me, I don't use long wall segments because mechanically they are not good. Is how payload. I would say it. they are just in general, right? You end up with like these lovely long walls, and part of that is because they just look nice, and there's some nice terrain sets. You know, I have the Imperial terrain, the temple, where you have the long walls, and I just never assemble them as such because it's just too much LOS blocking. Usually they curve, so you end up with like a really safe spot. But sometimes you roll up to a table and it's got a lot of walls or just too much LOS, and that is a problem too. Depending on who you're practicing with, you know, if you're both trying to practice for an event, do whatever, but maybe I'm trying to practice and Seth, you're not, you know, you're just helping me. Practice the harder one for you. If it's Iden versus Yoda Clone Ball, you probably don't have to practice the wide open map because that's just making it easier for me. I have the long range units, the ones with an infinite sniper rifle. A wide open map is going to benefit me. In that matchup, I want to practice, you know, the close quarters map more, where it's a little harder for my sight lines on the snipers. Vice versa, you know, if I'm playing against a sniper list, maybe I want, and I am the aggro list, I want to play on the open board because you want to practice for the worst case scenario. Sounds obvious, but you know, sometimes it's like, no, I don't want to play that. That's going to be so disadvantageous. But when you're in an event, you don't get a chance to dictate that.
That's true. So. Well, that was a little side tangent that we had.
So many side tangents, but useful. Yeah. Now we're truly done.
We are, yes, absolutely. Well, thanks so much for listening to the Bombad Generals. Don't forget to check out the Bombad Tactics if you're into Shatterpoint. Again, this is not a Shatterpoint podcast. And stay Gungan.
This has been the Bombad Generals.
Listening to